Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live stream on captive parrot welfare beyond the cage door. I'm Don, and these are the real stars of the show, these birds over here. Our moderators are Amy and Eleanor,
Hello.
and her
Hello.
shadow. Hello. It's a good topic because a lot of people think just having a nice fancy cage is all you need for parrot welfare, but there's a lot more to it than that. And sometimes cages fall apart, don't they, Cecil?
He knows all about that.
Poor Cecil. That one cage went through a fire, and all I tried to do was move it a little bit, and it started to collapse. And what's horrible is the cage is really heavy. I mean, it's a heavy-duty cage, but it's a snap-together cages, and the snaps aren't working properly because they were damaged in the fire. So, but it's all together. He didn't get hurt, and you like your cage, don't you? You got it up on some 5-inch floor spacers that are meant for couches and things like that. So now he's not ripping up his paper on the bottom of the cage and making a huge mess of poop paper. There you get one sheet of paper and you get to tear that up.
Oh, bless you.
And that's kind of how he sounds about the whole thing. I prefer to tear up my other paper too.
That was our third moderator, Sunny.
Yeah.
Yep. She started making coughing sounds, but half the time I don't know if they're real coughs or if she's just practicing. So she's taking a leaf out of Pepper's book, I think, with her fake coughs.
Well, the ABA technique is to ignore the coughs, and when she's done coughing, give her about 30 seconds and then check to make sure she's okay. Because if you're going right after it, double checking instantly, you're going to promote that behavior. So you can use your eyes to check it out and just make sure it's not turning blue or something. But it's funny how they manipulate you like these guys do, right, Cecil? Yes. She jumped right up on my chest today and was pet me, weren't you? He was unhappy with me when I took all the paper out of his cage because the way it was set up, I couldn't get behind his cage and it was just making an unsanitary mess. So I needed to get it up off the floor. I didn't really plan to have the whole thing fall down. It has a 75-pound top on it, so at one point I've got the top falling down on my head and the sides going. That's after he's out, of course. But I got the sides trying to spread out, the door falling off. It was really fun, but it got all. It took me 2 hours, but I got it back together and secured so that can never happen again. You're going to have to cut a lot of wire and stainless steel zip ties to never take it apart. But we were trying not to do that, right, Cecil? We try to keep your cage together. We have with us today Mr. KK down here, and Sugar. Excuse me, and Pippa. Lucy, and Snowball, Jasmine, right, Chug?
The second peak. Okay, so you're so sweet.
Used to tell me, used to tell me how many people were watching it. Oh, there it goes. All right. You have to turn the screen around
Seven
to see it.
people, it says. And we have a couple of chatters here. So we have Colin Thurston, Jocelyn Trickle, and Falcons are here. So hello and welcome, everybody. We also welcome everybody just watching.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Yeah.
Jocelyn says hi ho from Atlanta. So I guess maybe she is on her way to Florida. Sounds to me.
Maybe she's going through the airport in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think Atlanta is a big cross point when it comes to air traffic.
Mm.
Well, it's a good time to listen to that song from the Little Feat from the Waiting for Columbus album, Oh Atlanta. Yeah, good song.
I
They
prefer
like
the
to.
Dixie chicken thing.
That's on the same. On the same album.
Oh, she says yes. So we wish you a good travel, you and Cinnamon.
Yeah. Fly high, fly safe. Which Cause never used to be able to do because she didn't have tail feathers. So she could fly, but not safely. Landing was a problem. So if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I'll answer them here and there as we go along. And at the end, if necessary, what are you doing down there? I can't hear myself talk, so if I sound funny, it's because I can't actually hear myself. But it's like talking in a large box or something, or in one of their barrels. It's like a Cecil in a barrel. A Cecil in a barrel. It could have been in the Hobbit movie. Right in those barrels with Frodo, huh? So the big question is, what is captive welfare for parrots? What does welfare really mean? Yeah, of course they have to have food and water. They need big cages. The comment I got from the folks that were here helping last month was, well, we'd like to take the cages outside to wash them. I go, they won't go through the door. I actually don't have any cages that will go through the door except for Pippa's, and she won't move into a larger cage. Did I say Pippa? I said Pippa. Yeah, I said Pippa. Zoom tight. What you doing up there, Pip? What you doing? So you have to deal with the physical needs, which obviously is the food and the water and companionship. Yeah, that's part of their physical need, especially with umbrellas. As you can tell, the Moluccans are pretty happy social distancing. Must have been a lot of pandemics on the Isle of Sarum. I always get that word wrong. It's the Isle of Sarum because they like to social distance. Not so much the umbrellas. So there's physical, there's psychological, and social needs kind of fit into the physical too. Because especially with the umbrellas, they like to be patted on the head, and this one comes over and taps me with his foot when he wants to be petted. Not as much after as when I first taught him that particular maneuver to get what he wanted. So basically, there are 5 domains. There's nutrition, environment, health, behavior, and their mental state. So you have a mental state right now? A little clingy? Is that what you are? Just a little clingy? Right now, most of the mental states here are just either half asleep or cruising. Even KK is just sitting there. He's not doing anything. I could stir things up by giving one of those rattle balls to Snowball. He does not like them. So, which is probably an understatement. What are you doing there, Cecil? So, they're not like dogs and cats because they're still wild animals. So, they have a lot of those wild needs that captivity doesn't do a great job of actually fulfilling. So a few seed treats and a big cage is not going to be enough. That's one of the reasons you see me taking them out. I mean, all the birds get out every day. So there may be an exception, when there's an emergency or something, but they got a shorter day when Cecil's cage started to fall apart. So getting it back together and making sure it was absolutely safe for him was a priority. So 2 hours spent doing that means they lost a little bit of time out, but they all still got out. And in the wild, these guys would fly 20 or 30 miles every day, foraging and playing and goofing off and all the things that they do. So just being in a place like this is, it's certainly better than being stuck in a cage. But I mean, in the wild, they'd be flying around. So just getting them out and having them sitting on a perch next to you is good. It's better than not, but a play area is really important. And although they don't seem to be doing much now, what you will see is Jasmine runs around like a crazy bird sometimes, and Pipple will fly from place to place, and Lucy will fly on my head, and she'll run around the ropes a bit. Cecil likes to play with toys, so he'll play with the toys and run around. Yeah, you need to give him some room to move. This one doesn't get off the perch in here, but she runs around in her cage. I shouldn't say doesn't get off, because she does get off the perch once in a while. Leave the door open sometimes while you're taking the other birds out, and all of a sudden she's gone. She's decided to go to her cage on her own. So. And so if they don't get some of these needs taken care of, if they're unable to get some of these basic needs taken care of, then what you're going to end up with is a bird that has either serious behavioral or medical problems. Now, for example, with Bob, he doesn't need a lot of time out, fortunately, because he doesn't get along with the birds in here. So if he gets out a half hour a day, he's okay. As long as I go over to the cage and give him some extra toys and talk to him, he's all right. But when he's not doing well, he'll pick up a toy and he'll tap it. He'll go tap, You can actually just go right along with it. He goes like this. He goes tap, 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 tap. When he starts doing that, that's stereotypic behavior, and that means his mind is not doing well. He needs something to occupy his mind. So sometimes I can fix that by getting him out a little extra here and there. Sometimes if I don't have the time right then to do that, I'll just put on something that's a movie like A Kiss Before Dying or something where there's a lot of action in it. And that'll get his attention and he'll stop doing the stereotypic behavior. But that's one of the ways you can tell when a bird starts doing repetitive behavior, you've got a problem. And it means you need to address their environment. You need to address their social and behavioral needs. If you don't, you're going to have problems. Right, Cecil? So what happens? When they don't get what they need, you might see. Now, it doesn't cause feather picking, all right? It's not the cause of it, but it triggers it. So anything that's potentially in their behavior, the reason that the birds pick best we know is that they pick because they miss steps in their development. Breeders take the eggs away from the parents, and so when you do that, raise them in an incubator, and then this predator, i.e., human being, when this human being is the first thing they see, and then they're raised by a human being feeding them by syringe, well, they're not going to be normal. They're not. It's not going to happen. Well, one of the things that Dr. Jenkins saw is that before they could actually raise them in captivity, because the idea of separating the egg, taking the egg away, popped into someone's head, and that's how they started breeding them in captivity. Before they couldn't, because the parents would break the eggs. Hey, do you want your kid to grow up in jail? So what he noticed within a few years of that, all of a sudden he got a flood of birds that were picking. Okay. So this basic tendency is sitting under the surface from most birds. Doesn't mean it's going to come out, but there may be something in the environment, something is lacking in the environment that causes it to come out. Other things that can happen is obesity. You have a bird that will just eat a whole bunch, kind of like people when they've got nothing to do, they're bored, so they just eat. Okay. If the perches in their cages aren't adequate, if they don't have like these rope perches are good for their feet. So if they don't have different kinds of perches and they're always sitting on the same kind of perch, they can end up with foot problems. So you get malnutrition from not feeding the proper food. If you're feeding one of these big mega stores, they have some parrot food, which is cheap. Yeah, you're feeding that to your birds. You're heading them to fatty liver disease and other problems because they're not getting the right nutrition. Only about 15% of a bird's diet should come from any kind of seed. So everything else should be pellets, fresh vegetables or cooked vegetables, mashes with pellets mixed in them, that kind of thing. So one bird, this cute one right here, Sugar came. The people who had her, dearly loved her and tried to care for her, but she was eating human cereals as food. She wouldn't eat pellets or anything. She does now. And she eats my birdie bread, which has pellets in it, that kind of thing. But it took a long time to get her away from Frosted Flakes. And, she was not in good physical condition. She's in good physical condition now, but she still has that ultimate tendency to mutilate. So, got to watch her close. And part of that is keeping her busy. She'll let me know when she wants her toys changed. She likes to keep them longer than most, but she'll eventually sit by a toy and stare at me. Like this one's got to go, and then I put a new toy in there. So most birds like to have them changed at least every other day, but not her. She wants to deal with that toy until she's done with it. She likes to play with toys on the bottom of the cage. She never did this before. This is all stuff that's developed over time, trying to increase uh, the livability of her environment. So when you have a bird that is not being dealt with psychologically correctly, in other words, if it's not getting enough socialization, it doesn't have enough stuff to play with, um, then you can get self-harm, like with her, or they can be aggressively territorial. Um, Here's one right there, Pippa. Yeah, she's over her cage. It says she eats lady fingers. So she is territorial. Um, Not with me, but she is territorial about her cage with anyone else. But usually that aggression comes from when they're just retreating to their cage because they're not getting enough stimulation. That's what usually happens. So now these aren't bad birds because you have a bird that bites or a bird that screams. It's because they're traumatized, okay? So we have to work to fix that. Sometimes Bob will start going back. It does happen that they'll go back to old behaviors. He'll start screaming, and I just deal with it. I work with him the way I used to. I ignore the screaming when he gets quiet or he starts saying "babaloo." I pay attention to him, so then it goes away again. But I got to watch to make sure he's just not so bored that he's going to get um, into a constant screaming situation. And it's not so much that the screaming bothers me; it's that I know he's not happy when he's doing that.
So then let's welcome some more chatters. So we have Rosebud Atkins, Spirit Matter, and Lisa Banerjee. So hello and welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
And Lisa has a question. She wants to know if KK was the talking bird.
When?
Probably in the last 2 minutes.
Probably. I wasn't listening for him talking. He's been over here sitting on the chair, and he generally does chatter.
Yeah,
I wish I could.
I thought I heard some cocktail chatter earlier.
It was probably him. Yeah,
So
he's
most
doing it.
often it's KK that he starts talking into this birdie beat when Don talks a lot. And sometimes Pippa throws in comments, but most often, and I think he's closer to the microphone, so probably KK. But we
Yeah,
will pay attention now.
yeah, he just chattered a minute ago, so he
Mm.
must be. He's in that kind of mood. So if you got a parrot that's alone in a cage, and that doesn't mean run out to buy another parrot and put it in the same cage. That's not a good idea. Even a different cage is questionable because they don't always get along because they're been raised by humans. Okay, so so if you have to work, so you leave them alone in a cage all day. Unfortunately, that is like putting a human in solitary confinement. So at that point, you can put a television on. Leave TV on for them. Um, the birds that are still in the other room, there's two television sets. They're tied together, so they're watching. What are they watching? I think they're watching Columbo right now, but just one Columbo episode after another. But it's just depending on their mood, I'll put on something that's going to get their attention, or one that's just background that they can look out and see humans talking. Yeah, they don't really know what to do when they see their own flock talking. So if they see birds that's kind of unusual for them. They weren't raised around birds, but sometimes that works out. It doesn't seem to work too well for these guys. You're not too interested in it, so you go with what they're actually interested in. So if you have been leaving your bird, because you have to go to work, right? You leave your bird alone. Leave them something for an entertainment. Make sure you put a new toy in the morning, unless it's of course a bird like. Some birds don't like new toys. Amazon's usually takes a while, but um, leave a TV on, leave music on, leave something to get their attention, and then make sure you give them enough time at night out of the cage so that they can take off that solitary confinement feeling. So the zoologists will say environmental enrichment is important, but uh, that's why there's ropes in here for them to hang on. And there's me too. That works too, doesn't it, Seesaw? But they need to feel like you have to give them something that's more like being out in the wild. The aviary is better, but today it's going to be 103 degrees Fahrenheit here. That's what, about 49 in Celsius, somewhere around that range. So they're not going outside, not in that heat. But Cecil, you have to get off my arm. Cecil, off my arm, you big toad. So hey, you two stop fighting. No fighting. No. He's getting a little territorial about this spot over here. He's getting territorial about that spot. Yeah. Uh-huh. He just stole the toy from Cecil. Cecil, did he steal your toy? He did? Why would he steal your toy? Bird, bird. I thought he was talking ancient history in the civilization of Ura, actually a town. Maybe it was because the is human. I don't. So they need space where they have freedom of movement. So they can move around in here. They might not look like they're going to do it. They will do it. They will start moving around. Once we're done with the video, they get highly active. That one usually waits, not always, but usually waits till Lorelei's in here, and then she immediately shoves her face in Lorelei's, like, okay, you're a white bird, preen me. They are the white slavers of the bird world, these Moluccans. They think that the only reason there's umbrellas in the world is to preen them. At least the ones I've got here. So learning to communicate with your bird, training is a good one. Training them. I've had many people say, I don't really see why they need to learn any tricks. Well, the first so-called tricks are teach them how to take a physical exam, open their wings, open their beak, be flipped upside down so that their underside can be examined. That's all important, right? I've added a new one. Get used to a stethoscope. That's something you need to have. You need a stethoscope, if only to make your bird so it's not afraid of them. When the doctor was here, that was the only issue we had. She'd bring out the stethoscope and the birds would go, what in the world is that? I've got one and I use it, but I have to get one more like hers now so that they don't freak out. But when you're training birds, you're developing communication between you and your bird, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're just training them to, follow a target around, whether that's usually your hand, to follow your hand. Eventually, that leads into a lot of other things you can train. But if you train them to pick up a ball and toss it, whatever little thing you're training them is teaching them about you, and you're learning about them. a mutual training session going on there. So, and the more you know about them, you can start to look at them and know right away when there's an issue. You know, if they're unhappy, this one, as soon as Lucy starts moving down towards here, she'll start changing her position and she'll start lifting her wings up a little bit. The feathers on the back of her neck will raise just a tiny bit. Her eyes will go slightly oval. She doesn't like Lucy climbing on it. She just doesn't like it. Um, she's obviously mated to me, and I never planned to be polyamorous, but you know, they make their choices. She chose me the moment she saw me, so I had no control over that. Unlike Sugar, that it developed over time because I was trying to help her stop mutilating. So, you too. So, when you're training, what you're doing is you're reinforcing good behavior or wanted behavior, and you're helping to give them choices. Okay, training isn't, you know, like in the military, you know, eins, zwei, drei, vier, you're links, links. You're not marching on the grinder, right? What you're doing is you're teaching them that they can make choices. They can choose to do something and get a reward, and you teach them that there are rewards to be had in the world. Well, Bob will say, you know, he will do his kisses at me if you know, if he wants a little peanut butter on a stick. He will usually do it just if I want him to, if I'll pet him for a response. But if I've got a stick of peanut butter and I say kisses, he'll definitely do it. There are times when he's not in the mood, where, you know, maybe he's getting a little stereotypic because he doesn't feel like he has enough to play with. With him, you need a huge area, like 40 by 40 miles, to really keep him fully happy. But um, he's doing pretty well because I focus on it.
Jasmine is having a good sleep, as always.
Yeah, she is. So there's a lot of things involved, you know, proper feeding, a good enough cage, toys to keep them interested. And that doesn't mean toys that can't be destroyed. They need things they can chew up. Um, Plenty of time out, uh, a range where they can move. You know, time out doesn't mean sitting on a 6-inch perch for 8 hours. That usually doesn't amount to time out. It might for some African grays, because there's some grays that aren't much into moving around, but uh, for most birds, that's not going to work. Interaction with humans, and if possible, with other birds, but that's a big one. You're going to bring in other birds in the environment. Get some training, don't and do some study on these guys before you try that, because you can end up with some really tough problems. They can attack each other and do it so fast you won't be able to respond. And if you haven't been training your bird, you probably you won't see it coming, right? I can usually see by just looking at Pippa when she's getting ready to get territorial. Or if Lucy starts moving this way, I mean, you can watch the two birds and you can see it start to develop. So generally, that happens just about the time I'm about ready to switch the birds around. So getting the social interactions, getting them out where they can move around, really important. Making sure that they're getting they got the right pellets in their diet and some fresh food to go along with it. And then, some of the ways you can tell if there's something going wrong is by weight. This recently happened with Kaz. she started losing weight, and she stopped showing an interest in things. She just got kind of a blank stare on her face. And so I went through a whole bunch of things. I mean, for a while I was giving her Pedialyte because I wanted to make sure she wasn't drying out. You know, because sometimes they stop drinking, and I wasn't watching her drink. Her weight is normally around 424. It went down to 404 grams, and I was feeding her. You know, giving her uh, KT Exact at night, and sometimes in the morning, depending on her weight. I had a sheet printed out, which I had ChatGPT help me with, so that when her weight got to a certain level, it was automatically feed her. This went on for what, almost 3 weeks, and then she was also on Baytril for a while, just in case there was an infection of some kind. And then the only thing I had left to try, I mean, we did blood work, came out she was a little bit dehydrated, but nothing else. So the only thing I had left was to take her off a tiny bit of Haldol she gets. I've never seen this before, but the second I took her off Haldol, within 24 hours, she was active and eating and all never. This normally happens with Haldol for the first 48 to 72 hours. And after that, it doesn't happen. The appetite depression goes away. Well, she's developed some kind of reaction, and now I took her off it, and the last evening weight was 438 grams. So, and her balance is better, and she was having some of these issues over time. All gone. So, well, this is an unusual thing. I've never heard of it happening before, but um, it can be something. I mean, you can develop a reaction to anything. You know how some people eat strawberries and then all of a sudden they're allergic to strawberries? Um, there can be some metabolic changes, you know, as they get older. So, you know, the method to deal with this kind of thing is you just keep plugging at it, trying to figure out where the problem is, and you go through, well, it isn't this, it isn't that, and it isn't this. I tried, changing her diet, all kinds of stuff in the midst of this, giving her different foods to eat. Um, but the trick was she had developed some kind of a reaction to Haldol. So she's probably not going to look quite as good as she did in the past, but she's going to act more like her old self. So as long as she doesn't start mutilating, we'll be okay. But that's the basic gist of what you have to do, and some of it's tough. I mean, most people like to take vacations every year. If you're gone for a couple of weeks, I know one lady, she had a kayik, and she was gone on a 2 week vacation. It really wasn't a vacation. She was actually going around to seminars and that kind of thing. But she got back and the bird was bald from the neck down. She had somebody coming over and checking on the bird, but the bird just tore all of its feathers off that it could reach. So even on something like a vacation, you need to find somebody who's going to be able to have that bird in their environment and do the things that are necessary to keep the bird sane, because you don't know if that'll trigger, just feather destructive behavior. Again, I say trigger, it doesn't cause it, it triggers it. What did you say? Okay, okay. What did you say?
Okay.
Okay, okay. What's up, KK Bird? What are you doing?
Was he lining up for more tapping?
I'm not sure what he's doing. And he might be.
Is he a chatterbird? Okay.
What's up, KK? What you doing?
Okay. Do you like to chatter along with Daddy?
Bird, KK bird, KK
Bird.
KK bird.
The Bob bird. And the
Yeah, I got a
KK.
kick out of somebody who said that I put bird after everything, like they don't know they're birds or whatever. That's part of my training, so that they they react to that word when I say good bird, right? So, but
Tap, tap,
Yeah,
tap,
there we
tap,
go.
tap.
See, it's
there
the
he
woodpecker.
goes.
It's his woodpecking routine.
Has he palm cockatoo ancestors? Because I think they like drumming.
Well,
But they
the
drum with a
DNA
stick, right?
if the DNA research is correct, which it probably is, the grandfather of all cockatoos is the palm cockatoo. So, which
Oh, wow.
kind of makes sense, but
That's really interesting.
and obviously that would have been when all these islands were actually part of that one continent.
Oh, yeah, that makes
Well,
sense.
yeah, and they all split off, and we got the variations that we have with the cockatoos, but
That's what I sometimes do when I have time. I like to watch the continental drift, like from Pangea to now, and then how they predict it to the future. And some do really cool YouTube videos about it, where basically no explanation, nothing, just watch with some calming music in the background. And
yeah.
then, of course, accelerate it because I don't have that much time.
Don't watch it in real time, continental
That
drift.
would be hilarious. But it's super interesting because you always look at some different point and then see like, oh, that was connected with that. And then it was like on that position on Earth. And that's really cool. And welcome, Jem and Jamie, who just dropped in.
Hello.
Hi, John and Jamie. Hello, big boy. Hi, Cecil. Yeah, Cecil just wandered out over there and then wandered back. What you don't see is he will actually go out and wander around the ropes. But usually when I'm holding the phone this way, he'll hang out next to me a lot. But yeah, he wanders around because when you're in a cage, you can't do much. Even the big cages they're in they're not big enough for them. So 4 foot by 3 foot by 6.5 foot is pretty limited space for one of these guys that are used to flying in the sky. At least their ancestors did. Yeah, they have some similarities with some of the other people on the North American continent who were brought here and kept in small areas and basically used for workers. So these guys have some common karma with that. Yeah, Pippa's moved. She's over on that. Wow, we actually had movement. We had movement.
Yeah, it's funny how everybody's pretend to do nothing.
Yeah, and
It's
then
not always
shortly,
that long.
yeah, shortly they'll get active. You know, it's just
Mhm.
as soon as they see me put the phone down.
Well, I've got my little sidekick here trying to be a cockatoo. She's going, ah, 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 ah.
Mm.
You're a really good cockatoo, Sonny. You're doing a better job than the real ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Limp.
just sitting there silently, and you're going, thank you so much.
Well, see, we learn, we teach the birds, and they teach us too, right? So,
Oh, they do.
Maybe she'll learn to eat salad as well.
Mm.
yeah, good. Then she can teach these guys. I can get a couple of them. Cecil and Bob will, and Jasmine will eat like kale, that kind of thing. But most of them, they just like, yeah, they look at it like, why are you putting that in here? There's only one that will eat millet, and that's Jasmine. Nobody else will even touch it.
Oh.
I
Well, with
found
my
that out.
budgies, it's pretty easy because they treat all the healthy stuff like it's the best treat ever. Like you can come with dandelion leaf or salad or whatever, and they are just thrilled.
Well, good for them. How did your budgies get so healthy?
Yeah, it's I have no idea. They always were like, because probably it's not all day long in there, so they for them it's always treat time. So when they see when you come in with something green, they go nuts and then eat it.
They are some of the better eaters in the parrot world, at least in captivity. The budgies are
Yeah,
the
it
worst.
depends. I think some who have been raised in other circumstances and were feed where there are these birdie treats from the store with a lot of corn and then sugar and other stuff and if they were raised with that, I think they tend to eat that. But both of them were probably raised with a lot of salad and mash and stuff, so I don't know. It was always in them, so I had not really much to do. Just basically delivering.
Yeah, chief cook and bottle washer. Yeah, yeah. With the cockatoos, it's usually a well because it takes so long for them to wean themselves. And I know in California, where I came from, the law was they couldn't sell them unweaned to a bird store, but they could do that to a private person. So yeah, that's wonderful. You sell a bird to somebody who doesn't have a clue about how to give the right nutrition to a parrot. You wonder who writes these laws. No, maybe you don't. You think about the stuff that the laws that get passed, especially where I live, and it's just being run by a bunch of morons.
Yeah, these guys are probably smarter than most of the politicians we have.
Yeah, a politician should be synonymous with idiot. Um, the only good politician I can ever remember, well, there's a couple, but the one I remember best would not have considered himself a politician, and that would have been Mahatma Gandhi.
Mm.
He didn't even like being called Mahatma. He didn't care for that appellation. But got stuck with it.
Mm.
All right, now if you climb up on my hand, it's going to be hard for me to use my phone. What are you doing?
So if anybody has questions or some stories, please put them in chat and I will read them. Otherwise, we all can watch KK getting a little jiggy with the hand.
KK, what you doing?
KK, the hand is already Manda's girlfriend. Just kidding. But Manda was also a little jiggy with the hand yesterday.
Yeah. he's not used to getting attention, so he's been sitting next to me with the second group, and
Mhm.
now he gets petted more. I have to be careful I don't pet him more than a couple of minutes.
You just have that effect on the birds, Don.
Well, I seem to remember some old television show when I was a kid saying "talk to the hand," and that's pretty much what they seem to like to do.
Mm-hmm. Talk to the hand, date the hand.
Yeah.
Lucy,
No,
what
you're
are you
not going to grab
shaking
my
for her?
thumb. No, you're not
And
going to do
Pippa
that.
is sneezy. I actually can contribute a little with my budgies, how make them happy at the moment. At these times of year, in our garden or so, when we have places where we basically allow the grass to grow high and have ears. And when I cut off that long arms, like just 4 of them, and hang that into the cage of my budgies or on some porch, they are actually busy with it at least 2 hours, complete 2 hours or even longer. First, they go for the seeds in the ear, and after they have that snacked, they basically are busy chewing it up in all different ways. It's pretty easy to make budgies happy. You just need to know how.
Yeah, you don't have to spend 2 hours out in a hot shed and when it's 100 degrees outside, cutting wood and drilling it, right?
Yep.
Uh,
I went out with a pair of scissors into my wildflower bed where the grass is allowed to grow. And there's always something fitting around the ear. So when you have a garden where you don't spray pesticides or stuff, or no harmful animal illnesses or so are going around, then you might find something to entertain your birds.
that's a good thing to do. It
It
would work
is.
for it would work for these guys too, but what we have outside here is mostly weeds. So
Mm.
I've seen
Yeah,
some
it
of the
always
local birds,
depends
but
where you live.
some of the local birds are out there eating the thorns off the trees.
Yeah, I
Not
think
much
the
to eat.
local birds are also go for it. For them, I have the budgies get the little smaller ones from the actual lawn grass we have. But then I also have sowed some wild grasses. And these specific ones, they grow pretty high, and they also have a little larger seeds. And they are not that large as the corn or the wheat we grow. So they're compared relatively small to it. But I think the finches and the sparrows, so they just love that wild seed buffet in our garden. Or look at these 2 preening poles.
They're cute. Yeah, the homegrown food is the best if you can make it.
I have a technical question though.
Wildly.
If you plant wildflowers out in your garden, how can you call them wildflowers?
Well, it's technically when you mean like the wildflowers, they who are just the ones who come in or so, but it's usually the ones who have been growing wild before the human came along with all the pesticides on the fields and on the lawns, and with that all the wildflowers disappeared from their natural habitat. And
Look at
basically
his.
I try to now grow them in our garden, so it's basically
Look at
endangered
the.
flowers
Look at.
which have a lot of how is it called, ecological value to the environment. So it's good for a lot of different insects and also birds. So some flowers are good for the night butterflies and some for the day butterflies, and some are great for the wild bees, and then some others are really loved by the beetles. And then we have ants with their farms on some, and they are just allowed to do what they want to. But yeah, technically it's not like completely wild, like the flower just came itself into it, but that's a little difficult by now because they are basically mostly extinct from where they used to grow.
If I can get him to do it again, he was giving me the signal to pet him, but now he's preening himself. He was beating me with his foot. Weren't you? Silly boy.
We just got a donation from Jem and Jamie, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can. Now that they've moved things around, I gotta. Yep, they have moved to media assets and had a problem finding it. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Now look, you'll see what he's doing with his foot. That's the pet me signal that he learned. Before
So
this, he was
smart.
nipping at my hand to try to get me to pet him. He doesn't do that anymore. He has learned to tap me with his foot instead. And I used scan and capture. I caught the first behavior that he did that would be acceptable, and I started working that into it. Whenever he did that, I would pet him. So he stopped with the nipping. Because what he was shooting for was getting me to pet him. So all I had to do is teach him that I would be triggered by a different behavior, and done. That's why you need to figure out why they're doing something, not just try to change it. It doesn't do any good to try to change a behavior if you don't know what they're trying to get. Once you know that, you got the key to success right there. Right, Cecil? That's the key to success. Good grief, Pippa. Yeah, the humidity in this room isn't quite as high, so she sneezes a little bit more.
Choo. Choo, choo.
She seems to be, although the doctors don't, we're going to go into the allergy thing again. We don't know if they have allergies because nobody's studied it, okay? But it seems as if she has a reaction to the actual dust in the air. Because the more humidity you have, and the better, well, here we go with dust, sugar instead of rouse. The more dust you have in the air, the more she reacts, and humidity keeps the dust down. It causes the dust to group together and then fall on the floor where you can vacuum it up. But in here, it's not. The humidity is probably about 25 in here, and It's closer to 40 outside, so in the main room. Outside right now, it's 1% or lower. Oh, there's no humidity out there. KK. KK. Don't get holding on to my hand. You know, because we know where that leads. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. No. No. You're not. You're a good bird.
We have a question from Jem and Jamie who says, no one knows if birds have allergies. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I was talking to another vet, not the one we have now, the one in Las Vegas, and he said that birds don't have allergies. And I said, "Do we have a test to see if they do?" And then he just looked at me and he went, "No." I said, "Okay, so if we don't have a test, how do we know they don't have allergies?" And then he changed the subject. So they probably do, but no one's tested for it. You know, it's not like you make a lot of money doing any kind of work for birds. Although, fortunately, we've had some heavy-duty biologists studying coronavirus, and they found out it's an autoimmune disease. And now some of the medicines that are used for autoimmune are working on parrots. So we may have a way to slow down and possibly keep the disease from progressing. And I know of some birds in Europe right now that are undergoing some of these the uses of these the drugs that fight against this autoimmune disease, and they're actually doing quite well. Of course, they're having to guess the doses and how frequently and whether to inject it or do orally. I mean, all that stuff. But we're in the testing phases. But it looks like we might end up like we did with AIDS, where the birds will be able to live with it instead of dying from those horrible diseases. So came a little late. If it come earlier, maybe peaches would still be around. But well, thank you guys for being here. Don't forget we do have merchandise. You can get there from our link tree, where all of our information is linked up. I believe you can also get there from our website. So thank you, Amy and Eleanor, for moderating. And I'm going to see if I can take KK and teach him about the birds and the bees, something like that. That doesn't include hands. It's not birds, bees, and hands. No, it's not. So we will see you on Wednesday, I hope. And thank you all for being here.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Cindy.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
The Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.